Thanks, guys, for being here. We're here today to talk about EigenLayer's latest release, slashing. We have a few of our key partners here. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves? Maybe start at the end.
Yeah, 100%. My name is Matt. I'm from LayerZero. I lead the DeFi vertical here. I've been here for roughly 2 years. And yeah, super excited for this.
Hi, I'm Tom. I am head of product at the Decentralized Infrastructure Network. We call that DIN. So we'll just use DIN from here on out. Yeah, we're part of the consensus team and are based out of like Infura.
Awesome. And I'm Matt Nelson. I'm the product lead for the protocol over at EigenLayer, and we're super excited to talk about some of these new features, this new release, and how we're going to kind of unlock some awesome creativity later on mainnet this year. So let's get into it.
Awesome. And I'm Grace, Chief of Staff at Eigen Labs, and really excited to talk to you all today. Well, let's just jump into it. So I think slashing has a lot of connotations in the space, sometimes even maybe a negative reputation. And I think it'd be really interesting for everyone to hear what is slashing on EigenLayer exactly and how it works. And maybe Matt, do you want to jump right in?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when you think of slashing, you probably think of Ethereum or the beacon chain or any number of kind of validators. Some of the things that we're doing with EigenLayer are going to be the same, but in reality, it's kind of what we talk about slashing. We talk about kind of this realization of, an EigenLayer version 1, basically a feature complete protocol. And to put it quite plainly, it just it's another kind of tool in the box that different types of developers have to enforce commitments that they're making to their users. So these services could be built around different types of commitments, and we're going to get into some with our partners here. But again, it's just a means to, have things like, rewards that go out in our protocol as kind of the carrot. And then we have, the stick, which is slashing to enforce, broken commitments and to make sure that when you have this kind of open innovation ecosystem, that you have a means to have these services that people are providing with the appropriate guarantees, appropriate cryptoeconomic security, and so on and so forth. So in the context of kind of restaking in an EigenLayer, slashing works relatively similar to what you have kind of mechanically on something like Ethereum Layer 1. You simply take some of the funds that people put up kind of as collateral to make these types of commitments. And in the case of improper behavior for the protocols that they're running, we, slash some of those funds. And the AVS developers get to decide the conditions upon which things happen for slashing. They get to decide, the amount, the types of tokens, the security that they're using. And it's really kind of an open ecosystem. And we're, again, building all of these really great tools to make it super flexible, super kind of oriented towards use cases as opposed to just kind of a security methodology. And we're also launching alongside slashing kind of our unique security model. So when we initially designed slashing, we kind of had to put into place a lot of controls around, protocol level guarantees with things like veto committees. We had to add governance to the situation, human elements to all these slashings, because in a shared security model, there are lots of different people kind of vying for the same underlying security, kind of restaked assets in order to secure these AVSs and to secure the different protocols that are being built on EigenLayer. But the really great innovation with our slashing release in the unique security model allows us to kind of ship a means for, avoiding a kind of a cascading risk scenario with slashing. It really just says, hey, I have some stake. I'm going to uniquely demarcate it to one protocol and one protocol only. And we handle a lot of the really complex accounting on the EigenLayer side to ensure that those properties are guaranteed to the AVSs. So when an AVS is designing a protocol, they can attract kind of that unique stake, and they can be they can feel comfortable and confident and make commitments about their protocols based on the assurances that that stake is guaranteed uniquely to their AVS, so that when they are making these commitments, they can slash against it with the right level of guarantee that it will always be available as cryptoeconomic security for the things they're trying to build. So that's kind of one of the key unlocks for this release, was the kind of unique security aspect. The other one is operator sets. And these two pieces together are really what is completely needed to enable slashing on EigenLayer. The rest is all the fantastic business logic that the AVSs are going to describe. But, we to kind of sum it up on the operator set side, it's just a means to take different node operators and different operators in general on EigenLayer that are running the code provided by these protocols, and logically segment the business operations of those folks, logically segment the security of those folks, so that different AVS architectures have a little bit more flexibility in how they design, the work distribution and the security distribution, and assurances around how slashing can be carried out against those commitments in those operator sets. So it's really kind of think of it, if you're, again, using the L1 model, think of it as kind of a validator set, but we can take the whole validator set of the entire platform and we can divide it up into these little pieces that give every AVS really fine-grained control over the security as well as the slashing commitments that are being made against those operators. And it's really cool as well because AVSs can have many of these operator sets to do tons of different types of tasks, to launch kind of more versions, more types of security, different functional pieces. And it's a really great innovation piece here that I know these folks are going to get into to talk about how, they've segmented their business logic and all this great stuff. And it's just a simplified accounting mechanism. And it's also an opt-in thing. Again, we're not just going to flip the switch on slashing and have all of these stakers and operators immediately be kind of on the hook. So operator sets, slashing release in general, unique security, all these pieces are opt-in. And it's up to the AVSs to be very communicative about their governance structure, about how they're going to attract that unique security, and how they're going to pay out rewards against the use of that security. So as I mentioned, there's kind of like the carrot in the slashing ecosystem with the stick, and the carrot is rewards. So the counterbalance to all of these new security models is how are the AVSs going to make really good commitments to their users, to their dApp developers that they're integrating with, to people they're serving on a variety of chains, and then how are they going to reward that back out? So that's kind of the overview. There's, like I said, two functional pieces, but it's really just all about unlocking the creativity of the AVS protocols to get into these kind of commitment, reward, security models that I think are super interesting. And I'm really, really eager to hear kind of what these folks have been working on too.
Maybe just for people who are new, maybe have only heard EigenLayer buzzwords, just to sum up, could you articulate the exact impact to operators in one sentence, impact to stakers in one sentence, and impact to AVSs in one sentence?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you explained it so well, but I think it'd be really interesting to kind of hear, like, for each of those people hopefully listening, what that impact is.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start with AVSs because those are the folks that are going to be really building on top of this release. Like I mentioned, the kind of one sentence version is you have more tools to enforce the types of commitments that you want to make, and you have more mechanisms to take advantage of the security on EigenLayer that stakers are providing. And again, you also have more tools to reward back out once those services commitments are being made and all this good stuff. It's just more tools for AVSs, and it's the last mile that they need to really make these great protocols that are built on the kind of guarantees of restake security. That's why we call them, like AVSs, like autonomously verifiable services. All that verification needs kind of that element of cryptoeconomic security. For operators, what this means is that you have a very opt-in mechanism to run more AVSs that have different slashing conditions, and they're going to be paying out hopefully more rewards to attract those operators, high-quality operators, and attract the unique security that they need to be able to make these commitments against the kind of slashing conditions that they're communicating out with their ecosystem, with their customers, with their folks. On the staker side, it's the same thing as well. You're just going to have more kind of levers for reward and risk on EigenLayer. So it's a measure of, hey, understanding what operators and what AVSs, what they're looking to use this release for, how they're using it, and, being a kind of proactive staker and saying, amazing, like there's, these new things that are being launched, but I have kind of new access to rewards, and I really understand the protocols that I'm, getting involved in, and these kind of restake security pieces. And I think it's going to be really great because we're going to see a kind of a nice opening up of the designs and really cool protocols that people build now that they have access to that tool of slashing. So hopefully stakers will have a lot more opportunities to earn rewards and to secure some really cool protocols.
It's also like, it's kind of this choose your own adventure, and you're able to align whatever AVS that makes sense for your risk profile, for your incentives profile. You're able to kind of have that like choice and say, this is what I want, and they align with my values or profile in this sort of way, which is pretty exciting and like brand new.
Yeah, absolutely. I think stakers should definitely take a look at what kind of operators are in the ecosystem, where they're going to put their values and what they're going to start valuing as far as what am I going to run, what kind of protocols, what kind of things. So definitely a new opportunity for stakers to evaluate what aligns with what they're looking for.
So we've talked a lot about the protocol feature details. I'd love to hear from our AVSs more what they're building, but maybe I think it's a good place to start of just saying what or how are you using EigenLayer currently? And then we can talk about exactly what slashing means, but I think it'd be a great start to kind of understand how you guys are using it and what it unlocks for your roadmap and business model. Tom, do you want to start?
Yeah, so the decentralized infrastructure network is progressively decentralizing to offer at its inception RPC services and remote procedure calls. So you want access to blockchain data, and there's various gateways that are able to do that. Infura is being one of them. They're able to access a network of providers who are best in class at doing that and do it so that users get the consistency and uptime they need.
Yeah.
The key of progressively decentralizing is being able to take a lot of the work that has to be done right now in a federated phase where the enforcement of SLAs is very much based on alerting systems plus people, the sort of standard developer operations, DevOps kind of flow, and be able to move that into roles, which are the operator sets that can complete that work and be incentivized and rewarded for doing that, and be able to enforce the SLA as well. So the first thing that EigenLayer is allowing us to do in becoming an AVS is actually move that SLA enforcement from this federated phase where there has to be an entity that's actually doing that. We currently do that using a role called the Watcher. And the Watcher role is done by an entity that's actually not part of consensus. It's compare nodes. They do rankings of RPC providers. They're very good at running test scripts and load tests and checks on them. We're moving that logic to them and other watchers that will come into the ecosystem and actually enforce that SLA. Another area that it really helps is to just align incentives towards running certain networks. So if there's networks that are gaining in popularity, you're seeing volume increases in the traffic. Right now, once again, that's done by telemetry and observability practices, instrumentation, and being able to actually publish that and have that be visible to the providers in the network and understand where there's opportunities to earn payment and then earn rewards by serving that traffic is a real benefit of using EigenLayer and becoming an AVS. There's a lot of other like small edge cases that get very technical that being part of the EigenLayer ecosystem in an AVS also helps solve. So we can get into some of those, but those are like really the two main big ones. And you can kind of see how being able to move that into a more automated and a more crypto native framework really makes sense in this space as you talk about decentralizing. And we're going to be on a journey of continuously decentralizing over the entirety of our existence. And those, what being an AVS does is allow us to, as you know, we expand into potentially other services outside of RPC. This is the tools that being an AVS gives you actually allows you to more easily than any other framework I've seen, like actually adjust to those new conditions, what you're trying to do in terms of create a new operator set, which might be a new Web3 API service, enforce a certain slashing condition, or I guess we'll probably get into like jailing, ejection, things like that are not all the way to slashing, but do have an impact, or just having a really good onboarding flow with identity management. So there's a lot of areas that we see just huge benefit to being an AVS.
And you saw, like, I mean, this is something I didn't fully appreciate until now. The whole mission and vision, and correct me if I'm wrong, of DIN is to create a decentralized network. That's in the name. And basically without EigenLayer offering economic security in the way it does with slashing rewards and those conditions, it would be much harder for you all to do. So you are in some ways where that's some of the benefits of the easy match between the work all we're doing and what we're doing.
Absolutely, because we would have had to build a version of this ourselves if this didn't exist. And there's a lot of, just because of what's happened probably with LayerZero, like the shared learnings, I think being part of like the AVS community, there's a lot of shared learnings. You see what's going on with EigenLayer. It collectively makes all the AVSs better because you're seeing the innovation happening and you're seeing, oh, this is how this problem is being solved for storing blobs, right? Okay, there's a lot of similarities there that can be applied to what we're doing. It might not be like one-to-one, but it's very useful to have that community of the AVSs. And then I think it will be the same for the operators. They have their operator community, the staker community. Building communities is super important, and having the scaffolding that allows you to do that is what, in many ways, I've kind of seen an AVS provides.
Yep. No, that's really, really cool. Matt, I'd love to hear about LayerZero and how you guys are working with EigenLayer.
So I'll take a high-level approach in explaining LayerZero and how we work with EigenLayer. So LayerZero is a protocol that allows any sort of data payload to move from chain A to chain B. And on top of this primitive, you can build pretty much anything you want. So right now, like, you can move tokens from chain A to chain B. You can do state data transfers. You can prove ownership of one chain and pass that data along to another chain. There's a lot of really cool use cases that you can build out with this very core primitive that we built at LayerZero. Every single transaction in sort of like this system of like 120 chains that's going back and forth, every single one has to be verified by a set of what are called DVNs, which are decentralized verifier networks. And that is configured on the application level. So if you're an asset issuer, if you are someone who wants to build an omni-chain application, you configure sort of how you want every transaction to be verified. So it's very permissionless in that case. And so within this DVN, what we're doing with EigenLayer is enabling staking and slashing to occur. So we kind of built out this custom cryptoeconomic DVN is what we call it, and branded it together, which is really awesome. So essentially right now we have around 40 different DVNs that are open in the marketplace. Anyone can choose from. You can create your own set. We call it X of Y of N, meaning like you can have like 3 of 5 DVNs, and you can choose those, like these 3 that must always verify every single transaction. And so you can create very complicated workflows through that. What this new slashing mechanism and also the work that we're doing with EigenLayer enables for these DVNs is a layer on top of this security that's the cryptoeconomic layer, right? So now you can stake assets within that DVN through the AVS model. And now you add sort of like a new dimension of security that's broader than just like the proof of authority, sort of like reputation aspect. So even if you choose between like 5 or 6 or 20 different DVNs, now you can add an economic layer on top that makes it even more battle tested and adds more sort of like reputation at stake for every single transaction that's being used. So it's really awesome, and definitely can speak more about it.
I really like how you said it's like reputation at stake, like, and that's such a currency in this ecosystem. And I think that's really interesting when you're talking about how it's not just, carrot and stick like you were talking about, like that's partially it, but it's actually like the players on the network that are using the slotchy feature, like there's some skin in the game, some like you want to be able to show yourself well. You want to be able to say, I have these sets and I meet these qualifications and I'm meeting them and being a good actor. And you're going to build credibility within the EigenLayer ecosystem by following through. And hopefully not many, but some will lose a little credibility, but you're kind of like almost building your own reputation, own currency, own kind of brand within the EigenLayer ecosystem. And you're now able to, because you can opt into this feature. So it's kind of a new way to level up yourselves within the network.
100%. And like the end goal, or how I see it, is that there are currently 40 DVNs, but this will expand, to be many, many more. And at the end of the day, if you're an application or an asset issuer and you're moving a lot of value across chains, like choosing who you want to be securing these transactions matters a ton. And so adding this new cryptoeconomic layer to that, it's also very transparent. Like every application can see which DVNs are securing which assets and what is being staked there. So it adds a lot more transparency as well as more reputation, like you said, so that people can make better informed decisions on how they want to secure their own applications.
I'd love to hear a little more about how you're using kind of this release specifically. Maybe it ties to operator sets, maybe it ties to slashing, but to solve this kind of bootstrapping challenge when you're launching new experiences or new chains or new, like you said, DVNs, like how do you view that kind of playing out in the lens of what we're launching with this kind of new release?
Yeah, 100%. So we're rolling out, starting off with LayerZero Labs DVN, which is predominantly used by most applications. And so within that specific DVN, this is the first one we're doing together with EigenLayer. 3 assets will be staked. So the Eigen token, ZRO token, and ETH will be used as 3 assets. And the slashing model is built in place as well. So the idea is for applications, if there's any sort of like downtime or something goes wrong, there's like a faulty payload, the DVN is not doing its job, that's obviously where the slashing is coming into place. But you can get way more creative with this. And I don't know what the future looks like in terms of how this all plays out, but I envision a world where very app-specific DVNs, these are like the largest asset issuers in the world, and they want to participate in their own security. Like Grace mentioned earlier, it's like putting your money where your mouth is and saying, look, like I'm willing to put up my own tokens into my own DVN to kind of prove to the world or show the world that there is value here, and like we're using it to secure our own assets, right? And so there's 2 types of DVNs right now, very generalized ones like the LayerZero Labs one, Nethermind, and a few others. And then you have very app-specific ones, which are like asset issuers or even like ecosystems that want to have their own sort of DVM with their own apps running and operating them. And so I envision a world where the app-specific ones are using like their own assets to actually secure their own applications, and also that kind of flywheels into an effect of other people trusting it as well.
No, that's super cool. Wanted to jump back to what Tom was saying. Like, so while this is a big major release for us and is enabling a lot of use cases, which is really exciting, I'd love to hear like a little bit more about like the slashing journey and where we are on it and how we should be thinking about that a little more.
Yeah. So
Like you said, jailing, ejection, I think.
to play off what Matt said about reputation, rewards to slashing is really a various point in time representations of reputation. Is kind of is that kind of you think about it as well? A little, I mean, yeah, because it builds over time, right? So if you have a participant in your system, an operator, they are always getting rewards. They're showing that by the rules of your AVS, they're doing what you wanted them to do. They're doing the work in the way that it was expected to be done. And if they're getting slashed, they're not. Conceivably, there is a customer at the end of the day who, if they're not doing what they needed to be doing, that has a bad impact on the customer. There has to be a enforcement mechanism to ensure that your customers can trust you and that they're not losing that trust in your product. I'd assume it's the same for LayerZero, but just in like the RPC provider space, that trust, which is typically been given to the various providers, is very hard to get and very easy to lose. Now, there's a spectrum of what can happen. And I'm stealing this from Matt Nelson. I did not come up with this. So you came up with this, you get the credit. The rewards, the carrot definitely helps. The rewards are like the big carrot. There are smaller carrots you can give. If you're getting rewards, at least in our ecosystem, it's a good signal that as you add new services, which for us are represented as operator sets, you have a very high probability of having success in running that network, right? And this kind of happens already, like when people are making choices around who am I going to use for this new network? A testnet just launched. I want to figure out how I can, who should I start using it? Well, one aspect is like who has it available, but oftentimes it's like what's the incentive mechanisms for someone for a provider to have it available, and do you trust that they're going to give it to you at the quality that meets the quality that the other parts of your business are based off of? So you can see how there's a direct rewards. You're serving that traffic. You're doing a great job. You're getting paid for that traffic. You're also getting the rewards. The next, that smaller carrot is, as there's new opportunities, it signals that, hey, this would be an operator, which is associated with an RPC provider or potentially a new Web3 service that is an RPC. You're able to do that well, and that the stakers should be interested in making sure that you are the one that does it, right? That they are saying, hey, we believe in this team because they're running Ethereum well, they're running Polygon well, they're running Arbitrum, Optimism, et cetera, all down the line. They're running all these networks well. We believe in them. We're gonna stake. Now you start to move into the sticks. Stuff happens, right? Like there's no data center is up all the time. So what DIN allows is we do have built-in fallback or failover. It has a couple of different names. Providers are not, and then you have to do maintenance. There's upgrades that have to happen. Sometimes downtime is necessary. We can build that. We have built that into our system because there's multiple in each operator set. We always make sure that there's multiple operators so that there's always someone who can serve that traffic. And whether it's planned maintenance, whether it's an unplanned outage, there is an opportunity to just remove the traffic. So our watcher role is able to detect that. We also have health checks on the proxies, the router. You just remove the traffic till they fix it. And that is not it's between a carrot and a stick. Matt said it's a poke, because you're saying, hey, get it right, get it back online. It's okay to have some errors there, but we're going to remove the traffic so no one's getting a bad experience. And the end user that is getting that, data from whatever blockchain that is, they just see, hey, things are working as normal because health checks, watcher checks pick that up. When they come back online, traffic resumes. Great. There obviously is a cost to that per provider of the RPC, because they weren't making money during that time. You're not eligible for rewards. You're not serving traffic. It's that poke because you're not getting slashed, but you're motivated in that role to, I need to get this back online working as fast as possible. Now, we have right now in the AVS the AVS smart contract system that we've, as of today, deployed on testnet, have a single slashing condition. And this is very focused at the RPC use case. The way that you break trust is you cannot serve data from a chain. If you say you're serving data from one chain, you have to serve data from that chain. Obviously, there's reorg situations. There's some chains, there might be times when, you serve data at this point, there's a reorg. That's all in the stick, like, hey, reorg the chain, make sure you're on the heaviest chain. If you are serving data from the wrong chain, you've broken the trust assumptions, and that's when you get slashed. We realize that if that's like a blip, there's some weird misconfiguration that's picked up at the health check, there was no customer impact. We have also built it so our contracts inherit from the middleware the ability to have the slashing conditions, but also the veto committee. The veto committee is one of those areas that we're introducing governance, and it allows our veto committee is like the most performant providers for basically a time period. We call it an epoch. And they're able to vote and say, what did this rise to the condition where if this had a customer impact, and these are the subject matter experts on running these Web3 services, they're able to say, yes, this, you need to be slashed and you will be ejected. Now, there are times when there's those, like I said, there's reorgs, there's errors that can happen in certain clients, and you don't want to go as far as slash or eject, but you can jail and basically say, this provider has shown that they are not serving the traffic in a way because either they're so lagged, they're returning 503s, that we need to jail them. They're not eligible to receive traffic until they go through that watcher testing flow again and prove that they can do it under a stress and load test. So we have that full spectrum from the rewards, the ability to then get, be part of new operator sets, the removal of traffic, the jailing. We can even do ejection without slashing if the conditions rise to a full slashing and ejection, which sometimes is if it's so egregious, it's graveyarding. You're not letting that operator back into being part of your AVS because they've broken those trust assumptions. Slashing allows you to have that full spectrum to enforce the trust assumptions. You hope that you never have to use it, but the fact that it's there and everyone in the AVS understands that, hey, when I'm participating as an operator, I'm opting into this. So I need to get this right because I don't want to be in a position where I'm getting slashed and ejected. It actually helps everyone. It raises the bar. It makes everything more professional. It doesn't enforce necessarily standards, but establishes norms in your community to say, these are the best practices you need to do, and they're driven by economics. Those actually tend to do a lot better than enforced standards. Those norms of this is how we should do it, and we're going to do it this way because if we don't do it this way, the end user is not going to trust us. And this whole business is based on trust. And I assume it's the same for you. For LayerZero, it's probably the exact same sort of scenario.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think the way that DVNs operate right now, it's mostly on reputation, which is great. And the more you diversify, right, you can create these very exotic sets of 2 of 5 of 10 DVNs. It's still the baseline is on that reputation aspect. So having cryptoeconomic security obviously adds to that. And the way I view it is also with slashing and staking, you're also adding sort of a marketplace where you can price risk more accurately than before. And I'm curious, we're going to have some dashboards that go live, I think next month on DVNs and their uptime, the number of messages they've secured, and also with this new staking and slashing mechanism, how much has been staked within certain DVNs. And so you can start to model out and price what risk looks like. And crypto has been notoriously terrible at pricing any sort of risk. I actually don't think you can do it accurately today at all, even in DeFi. So this is sort of a step forward into understanding more of how that sort of can work out.
And I think just going back to what Tom was saying just for a moment about, I think sometimes operators think slashing and scary, this is a major risk for me. One, it'll be very transparent, whatever they're opting into, but also it's not necessarily always, oh, you're going to be slashed and kicked out. It's actually the poke, the jailing, there's a way to tier it that I think hasn't been well communicated just yet. And I think that's really interesting to kind of set that expectation up front that they're out there. But I could talk about this all day with you guys, but I think we are running just out of time. So I wanted to ask one final question. Is there anything, Matt, for you that you think is important to share about slashing?
Yeah. I think that, frankly, the last point that Matt made and the point that Tom's been making about these two kind of dimensions, right? We have this dimension of communication, of price, of risk, of how figuring out all of these kind of market dynamics. We are really encouraging, of course, the people to build out the technology, these AVSs, but we really want to encourage the discussions between our protocol participants, our operators, the stakers, to have this really fantastic kind of discussion around pricing these things, building these things. We consider it more of a dialogue. Every AVS that gets deployed onto EigenLayer can be thought of as its own little protocol. And as Tom mentioned, these people are bootstrapping communities. They're bootstrapping high quality validator sets and operator sets to do these types of tasks. So I really would love to see these continued discussions between them, their operators and their stakers around what is the price? What is the legibility? How do these risk dynamics play out? And I think that we'll get to a really fantastic equilibrium point in the future where we have effectively kind of priced this in, which I think is super fantastic unlock for just protocols looking to build in general, definitely with things like LayerZero with Infura. And it's the same with the spectrum of these types of penalties. Yes, there's code that needs to be written, but I think with protocol design, we want these discussions to incorporate all these different participants to say hey, you know, we're building this really cool thing. We have more levers than we've had before. Let's talk about how we're going to use these things. Let's talk about how it translates to code and how it translates to risk versus reward profiles for the things that we're building. So, you know, again, I encourage everyone go read the governance documents we have out. We have ELIPs, we have kind of explainers, we have some blogs and some forum posts. Go check out what these folks are building. There's definitely news coming out of ETH Denver and out of these other things. As Tom mentioned, they're launching test nets available for people to at least kind of view the kind of code that they're pushing out. And the same with LayerZero coming later on kind of in the month of March and beyond. But yeah, I think that thank you guys so much for coming in. This has been super awesome. And I'm like super happy to have these dialogues. And I think that, like I mentioned, I want to keep pushing this kind of protocol of protocols discussions. And I think that these will be really, really awesome to see how you folks build out these things in the future. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Yep. Having us.